25 years of an India-US strategic partnership, and you have President Donald Trump literally drive a truck filled with explosives.
India is that only country in the world
Yeah.
that has refused to accept Trump's claim that he helped end a war.
The US is not here for charity. They are one of the smartest nations on earth. They may not win a lot of wars, but they are among the smartest business people on the planet.
Do you think whichever we go is going to be a very fraught choice for us?
That's when the Green Revolution began, and Mrs. Gandhi, as the story goes, said that don't ever make me call an American president and beg for food.
To be an enemy of America can be dangerous,
I knew that. Yeah,
but to
that's
be a
coming.
friend is fatal.
Fatal. How does a country like the United States, which is on the other side of the world, control events on the other side?
Welcome to Inner Defense. This week, we go from the bunkers to the air-conditioned offices in the South Block. From fighter jets firing missiles to paragraphs of words being sent via note verbals. The world and art of diplomatic warfare. It's been a pretty interesting week. And to discuss this with me is Sandeep Unnithan. Hey Sandeep, how are you?
Good to be back, Dave.
Crazy
as
week,
always.
as
Crazy
always.
week, news packed. I'm not complaining.
Yeah. So what's happened this week? Trump has slapped India with a total of 50% tariffs on goods physically being sent to the US. For now, I think the 25% tranche is active. The other 25% that he announced just the day before, when we record this, will be taking effect in 21 days, is what the order signed by the president of the US says. He's basically mad that India is buying cheap Russian oil, but the West was pretty much okay with it up until some time ago when India was doing that and helping the global crude prices stay stable.
Stabilize it, yeah.
But now it's become a problem for him, because I think he thinks in his head that India's purchases are fueling the Russian war machine in Ukraine, and basically sort of not helping him end that war and have another claim at the Nobel Peace Prize that he so dearly wants. And so we're in this mess. I was going to start this episode with this pretty strong MEA statement that came out a couple of days ago. This was before the additional tariffs kicked in, actually, or were announced by Trump, or even the threat of it, actually. It was, I think, a reaction to Trump announcing the first 25% tariff on Indian goods. That statement by MEA was unusually strong. A lot of commentators took note of it, that this is not usually the way the MEA, the Indian Ministry of External Affairs, reacts and speaks about the US, especially. But before we get to that, actually, Sandeep, I wanted to draw your to talk to you about something that I thought was very coincidental. But right the day later, the day after the MEA statement, you had the Indian Army's Eastern Command putting out the tweet. The tweet that said. It was a throwback tweet that, we're reminding people, just FYI, what happened this day that year is that this day that year, the US arms worth rupees $2 billion were shipped to Pakistan. This was a headline from back then.
Over the last 20 years. From
So
the
back,
50s to the 70s.
But the this day that year was basically this headline was printed that year. So that's even the army is throwing shit at the US now. Do you think that was a coincidence, or it was just like it was actually intentional?
No, it's not a coincidence. Of course, everyone was looking at things very carefully, and I just checked that tweet hasn't been deleted.
Yes.
Which means there is like all of Eastern Command approach in putting out that tweet. I think everyone's a little disgusted with what's going on, Dave. Especially considering where Indo-US relations have come from. At least from 1971. 1971 is possibly the lowest point that India-US relations have ever been, right? With Nixon and Kissinger in the White House, all kinds of names that Mrs. Gandhi was called by them. It's almost unprintable. And then you have this, open support of the military dictatorship in Pakistan. And you just have to read the blood telegram to know how outraged even the US diplomats were. And this is Archer Blood, whose telegrams went out to the State Department, where he says, look, American arms are being used to butcher innocent Pakistani civilians. From there we came to this stabilization of ties from 2000 on, when that historic Clinton visit, 5-day Clinton visit in March of 2000, where literally the first time that a US president visited India in 2 decades. 25 years of an India-US strategic partnership, and you have President Donald Trump literally drive a truck filled with explosives into that building.
Yeah.
How much worse can it get?
Yeah. We don't know actually.
Right. It's only begun, I guess.
It's only begun, yeah. 3.5 years more of
Oh,
President Trump. So there are many aspects to this. There's obviously the Russian angle. There's the not talked about as often the agriculture angle.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, before we talk about those two issues separately, I want to draw your attention to something that geopolitics expert Michael Kungman
Yeah.
said earlier today, that this could actually, he basically did not use the word ego, but that's what he basically pointed to by saying that, India is that only country in the world that has refused to accept Trump's claim that he helped end a war. I'm talking about the India-Pakistan conflict during Operation Sindoor. India has repeatedly said that it was just India and Pakistan that brokered the pause in fighting, and without calling Trump a liar, has basically said that the US played no major role in it, apart from just exchanging some telephone calls and stuff like that. I'm guessing Trump is not very happy with that. So one point is that all of this actually is just about one man's ego, just like many wars are.
Absolutely.
Your take on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've nailed it, and so has Kugelman. The fact is that it is all about Trump, and the thing is that countries have disagreements all the time. They disagree all the time, but all of this happens behind closed doors. So countries don't call other countries names. They don't certainly humiliate them the way Trump has been doing that, and he's made it into a fashion statement for him. There is nothing that's sacrosanct anymore. He will call Zelensky to the White House, and he'll humiliate him for the kind of clothes that he's wearing, and unleash the vice president on him. So this is like, as someone said, it's like watching a car crash in slow motion. You know where it's headed, and you're almost like powerless to do anything about it. And that's what Trump has been doing. The kind of names that he's been calling us. He said it's a dead economy, and India is a dead economy. Yeah, sure, we're a developing country. We have our issues with the economy, but we're not a dead economy. We're one of the fastest growing major economies in the world, which is why the United States is here doing business with us. Which is why Apple has moved its factories here to India, right? It's certainly not a dead economy. And then saying, that crack that he dropped about, we're going to find oil in Pakistan, and maybe India can buy oil from Pakistan. So to my mind, it's like a lot of the effort that both countries have kind of put in over the last 25 years, since that very historic Clinton visit to India, it all seems to be going down the drain. And you're watching this on a daily basis. And, while I think that all of this could be temporary, it's a tariff thing, we have 50% tariff, it'll probably come down. It will eventually. But it's the whole grammar around all of this. It's all the tirades and, the open berating of India. All of these, South Bloc has long memories, like I'm fond of saying, that it took us nearly 25 years to come out of the anti-US camp, which is where we were for justifiable reasons. We were with the Soviet Union. We picked a side. So did the Americans. They chose the Pakistanis. But later, when our economy started kicking into high gear post-liberalization, look, the US is not here for charity, right? They are one of the smartest nations on earth. They may not win a lot of wars, but they are among the smartest business people on the planet. And they saw where the Indian economy was going post-liberalization. They saw where it would be 20, 30, 40 years hence. And this is how empires think. And let's face it, the Americans are an empire. They are the continuation of the British Empire, the Anglophone Empire, right? They saw where India was going to be, and they wanted to partner with India to act as a hedge against China, right? All of this, what we've seen in the last couple of days with Trump and all that, it's left a very bad taste in everyone's mouth. And which is why you've seen a very measured, you've seen a lot of silence, strangely, from our side, if you've noticed. The Prime Minister, who's a great friend of President Trump, they had a great bonhomie at some point during his first term, Ab Ki Baar, Trump Sarkar, all of that. You remember that? It's now Tariff Sarkar, too bad. But there's been a silence from the topmost levels of the government. And I think that's that's puzzling. And maybe Trump is a little surprised as well. Why is my friend Modi not picked up the phone and spoken to him? He spoke to him once, just before Asim Munir's visit to the White House for that lunch. But that was kind of to, preempt anything that Trump might say soon after the meeting, right? And of course, politely turned down that ambush invitation to Washington, D.C. So, I think policymakers here are a bit baffled by what's going on. It's just a thing of, we knew Trump is a loose cannon. We knew his second term would be far more unpredictable than the first, but we didn't expect to be in the firing line.
Yeah.
I think that's where the biggest surprise is. And the thing is that, why do we think we are so special, Dave?
Yes, actually.
He's not spared the Brits, right? The British are the closest that any country has been to another country, right? They share nuclear weapons. The British submarines fire American nuclear tipped missiles. That's how close they are, right? They are the Anglosphere. He's gone out and hammered the Brits. He's taken on the Canadians.
Canadians.
Yeah. So as the Hindi saying goes, I mean, which radish of which field are we? Hum kis khet ke mooli hai, right? Why do we expect to be treated any different from that? And I think we should have anticipated that this car crash, coming our direction.
Yeah, I think you're right there, because I think from Trump's first term, I think a lot of people, commentators as well as people in India, they were very much happy to sort of see the train wreck from far away, see and make fun of him, laugh at him, and just like be like, but it's going to impact us.
Yeah.
But now that it's impacting us, you suddenly realize, like, oh
Absolutely.
my God, this is
man.
this is an issue.
We're right in the middle of things now.
So one part of this episode obviously is going to be about India's evolving response to Trump and what he's doing, but that's going to be a bit later. Now I want to talk about the two core issues at hand, apart from, of course, his ego that we've talked about. The need for him to get his ego massaged. Russia, that's talked about because he's put it out there himself that this is basically because India is buying Russian oil. And the second, much more important point about agriculture. In fact, PM Modi said just this morning that India is willing to pay any price to protect its farmers and cattle herders and fishermen. So we'll come to the agriculture topic in a bit, but the Russian oil thing. So we've not stood by Russia, I'm sorry. We've continued buying Russian oil ever since the Ukraine war began, ever since the first set of sanctions started trickling on Russian goods, including oil. Not so much as to stand by Russia, like I said earlier, not because Russia has been a sort of a friend person like over the years, but it's just cheap for us.
Yes.
And we have a vast economy. We have we have a huge need for oil, and it just made business and economic sense to just buy cheaper oil levels of course. It helps that, like we've said officially, the MEA, that initially the West encouraged us to buy Russian oil because that sort of helped stabilize the price. And if I remember correctly, in the initial months, India was taking in Russian crude and exporting the refined petroleum to the rest of the world.
To the rest of the world, including Europe and
United
States.
So they, were very happy with it. But it's now come to this. And no matter if you want to be patient, no matter you want to have your own you want to have your own standing, you want to stand by your convictions and feelings, but the fact is that it's going to have some impact and cause some rethink, right? There was already a Reuters report last week, if I'm not wrong, that the Indian PSUs have paused Russian oil purchases in the last 1 week. Though when the MEA was asked about it, the official spokesperson Randeep Jaiswal said that it's they make decisions on an evolving basis. It's a market.
It's a market.
Come on, man. But do you think, at least for the near term, this is going to cause a rethink in terms of do we or do we not buy Russian oil? And do you think whichever we go is going to be a very fraught choice for us?
Well, it is. It's certainly going to be a choice that's fraught with an enormous risk. And I think the government of India is already looking at increasing the energy basket, diversifying it and getting more American oil. There's talk of that $47 billion trade deficit that we have, which is the primary, not the primary, but the secondary reason for Trump's angst. The primary one, of course, being that we are buying Russian oil. And the secondary thing is that why aren't they buying oil from us? So I think you will see in the next couple of days, if not weeks, us buying more American oil and reducing that trade deficit. So that's a choice that the government of India will make. So all of this is up for negotiation. It's not cast in stone. 50% is not cast in stone. It's always been one set of tariffs, and then they're negotiated and they come down. So he's been doing that with every country. He's done that with the UK. The UK had I think they got a 30% tariff thing, and it's now down to 10. The EU also had something similar, which was double-digit tariff, which has again come down to about 15 or so, if I remember correctly. So these kind of things are all up for negotiations. It's but I think we were a little surprised by the tone and the tenor of the statements that came out of Trump's thing. I mean, it's not the first time that we've faced geopolitical issues. It's the first time that we've been at the receiving end of an American president's ire in a very long time. It's not happened. I think the last American president who said something close to what Trump is saying today is Clinton, right after the nuclear tests of 1998, when he said that India had dug itself into a hole and it was for India to dig itself out of that hole or something like that. And that is a one-off remark. But other than that, I can't think of any other American president who's used these words. And these words, they reverberate, they stay with you, they're bitter memories and all of that. But that said, these tariffs are up for negotiations. The energy basket will be diversified. The Americans might get a larger share of our pie that we buy. And there would be possibly hard-nosed negotiations that will begin when the U.S. trade delegation comes towards the end of the month. So it's all up for negotiations. It's all up how many cards we can put on the table, and what are the levers that we have on the United States. And one big lever is, of course, Boeing, right? The huge orders that we have, $60 billion worth
Air
of
India and Indigo.
Air India and Indigo, and Air India and this one, Akasa.
Sorry, Indigo is with Airbus. Sorry.
Yeah, and so these two would have a large number of orders, so that India would want to remind the Americans that, look, we may be ordering defense equipment worth $1 billion or $2 billion or something, but the commercial jets orders is huge. We're one of the largest buyers of commercial jets in the world. So all of these things are going to be thrashed out in the next couple of weeks towards all of this month through August. But then, there is going to be, like I mentioned, because of the kind of language that Trump has used, and of course this other very inexplicable shift towards Pakistan.
Yeah.
That's baffling South Bloc as well. So I think that is something that is going to worry the Indian policymakers, the Indian politicians, the ministers very, very profoundly as they're looking at this, the state of India-US relations under Donald Trump. It's only been 6 months.
Yeah, actually, it feels much longer. Actually,
it feels like 6 years already.
Right. And in fact, as we record this, I think news just came earlier this day that Field Marshal Asim Munir is set to visit the US once again in the coming few days. We don't know yet for what, whether we'll be meeting President Trump, but I'm guessing he probably will.
It's Kurilla's send-off is what I read.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So he's indulging in Kurilla warfare. Yeah, the Central Command head.
Right. So to the second point then, the one about agriculture and what I want to talk to you about, because this is not a subject that has been written about in depth as such. Primarily, I'm guessing because you don't really have much to go by in terms of official word. So I remember when Trump announced that, that big ass board he brought out and announced tariffs on every country. He had mentioned that US would like access to India's agricultural market. This morning, like I said, PM Modi, without naming Trump, he was speaking at a lecture for the famed agricultural economist
MS Swaminathan. Yes. The Green Revolution.
Yes, Green Revolution. Where he said that he was willing to pay a personal cost, no matter what it was, to protect India's farmers, cattle herders, and fishermen. What we can gather is that the US wants access to it for very good reason. I'm guessing the US market has reached a saturation point, and India is the biggest after China. So it's very easy to dump products over here, which is a big risk for us because cheap imported US mal is obviously going to hit your farmers. Some data for our listeners and viewers before you get in over here. So the US farmer on average gets $61,000 annually in subsidies. The Indian farmer only gets $282.
Right.
Agriculture accounts for 41% of total employment in India, while it's just around 1% in the US. At 14.6%, agriculture is one of the biggest components of India's GDP. In the US, it's just 0.92, close to 1%. The average farm holding in the US is 180 hectares per person. In India, it's around 1 hectare per person. This basically tells you how disadvantaged the Indian farmer already is vis-a-vis the American counterpart. And if they now have access to our market, it's gonna cause them trouble. India has been clear that we are not going to move on this. Do you think that stand will hold? Because I think the biggest sticking point in the trade negotiations is and has been agriculture.
Dave, I don't see India opening up agriculture to the United States. Come what may. I mean, they're not going to do that. It is actually a political atom bomb, to quote Rahul Gandhi, right, in a different context. But this one is an atom bomb because it's a very, very emotive subject. It's land, it's farmers. You may not really care about the farmers. Many of the political parties, I believe, don't. Otherwise, they wouldn't have opposed the farm laws, right, a couple of years back. But the government had to kind of roll back those farm laws.
That tells you that farmers' power by them.
Absolutely. And the fact that the emotive appeal of agriculture in India, I mean, at the end of the day, we are still we're a poor country. We're a developing country. We're primarily an agrarian society, which is making that transition to manufacturing and services, right? China has, of course, done that much faster than us. The United States has done that the fastest possibly since the 19th and early 20th century. So, for us to now open up our farm sector at a time when all of those figures that you mentioned, they're just glaring, this inefficiency. The US is a farming superpower, right? It's looking for markets to dump its produce. And India will never open up the, agricultural sector for precisely for the reasons that I mentioned. The fact that it is a political time. It will be suicidal for any government to do that. It would be I think it would, the next biggest thing would be for any government to, accept the international boundaries as they are, occupied by Pakistan and China, right? These are non-negotiables. You don't negotiate on territory and you don't negotiate on agriculture. But that said, I think the Green Revolution, where the Prime Minister was speaking on today about MS Swaminathan, it is our single biggest achievement post-independence. The fact that in the 1960s, we were completely dependent on external sources to feed our people. That famous PL 480, Public Law 480, which is when we would actually have to call up the United States and beg them for food. Could you send up, some more grain shipments, please? And then the Americans say, oh, yeah, okay, fine, we'll do that. And then, so when Mrs. Gandhi makes that call, as the story goes, President Lyndon Johnson says, but why are you voting against us in the United Nations? You haven't been very supportive of us on the Vietnam War. We weren't, right? That was naked American aggression. So here's the thing, and that's when the Green Revolution began. And Mrs. Gandhi, as the story goes, said that don't ever make me call an American president and beg for food, right? So I think since then, we've now become completely self-sufficient in food. We're exporting food. And we're also feeding 80 crore people, free food for the last 5 years. You can debate on the utility of that, but it's a phenomenal achievement to feed 800 million people. It just tells you where you've come in the last half century or so. So, once again, I mean, agriculture, because of all of the connotations, the political ramifications and all that, is unlikely to be open to the United States. And for many other reasons as well, the GM food angle, for instance. Genetically modified food is rampant in the United States. And in India, as you know, we've just used it for maybe cotton. That's the only place we've allowed it, but not in foodstuffs. We have issues with the kind of food that is fed to American cattle, for instance, which is what makes American milk problematic for us. Because there's meat that they're fed and, all of those issues. So it's a very big contentious thing. Though I feel there would be some little areas where they might allow them to enter. Not all of agriculture, but there would be some give and take. The whole thing is give and take.
Exactly.
Yeah. They will take a maximalist position. They will say, 50% tariffs. But then, they say, okay, we are open to negotiating on this and this and this. My fear is that they might actually make while they hold up on agriculture, they might make significant concessions on defense, which is on agreeing to buy American hardware, right? And you've seen what's happened to countries who've bought American hardware. They've literally to seek permission to use
Yeah.
F-16 fighter jets. You saw that with Thailand and Cambodia. And worse is the prospect of American companies entering the Indian military-industrial complex. And
Still budding. Ours is still budding.
yeah. So they have a fully developed MIC of a kind that no country in the world has. It's the most powerful MIC in the history of humanity. And on the other hand, you have an Indian indigenous military-industrial complex that's just budding. It's barely 25 years old, which you've always had a public sector, you have a minuscule private sector, and you have thousands of MSMEs. You have startups, you have guys getting into drones and small technologies and all that, which will eventually grow, and that's always been the case. They start small, they operate out of garages, and then in about 5 years they scale up and they big players. And I've literally seen this happen with many companies, which I have visited in the last 5 years, 6 years. They started with small little workshops, and today they have like 5 and 6 story buildings because they've scaled up so quickly and they've got that. These companies are at risk from the US MIC because they're going to come in and they're going to buy out all these things.Ey're going to make Ramesh Chauhans out of all of these MSMEs and drink them like bottles of Coke. That's what's going to happen. That's my fear, but that's just my fear, guys.
Yeah. No, but that's a good point because that's something I was going to bring up eventually anyway, is that Trump's a businessman, like he keeps saying. So he's going to want concessions then.
He's a real estate guy from the worst real estate market in the world. The most competitive real estate market in the world, let's face it, New York.
Yeah. And negotiation is something that real estate thrives on.
Yeah.
Right? So he knows that. Defense. Do you think the F-35 gonna be a factor? Because like we've discussed in the Air Force episode, the future roadmap for India's Air Force episode, you said that the idea that you said, and you said that mostly what will probably happen is that India might get some more Rafales because you already have them in service, you have the spare parts, and then you'll go forward with your AMCA project and your Tejas, maybe Mark II and Mark 1A. Mark 1A are coming, the Mark II project. Do you think under all this pressure, there might also be a rethink on the F-35?
I think, the F-35 is on the table, even as we speak. There have been a couple of opinions to the contrary that, it's off the table and all. But everything is on the table, right? However harsh it might sound, even the farming sector is open for negotiations. There would be small areas, like I mentioned, that they would try and make inroads into. And similarly with the F-35 as well. That is also, a carrot that India would like to dangle before the United States, given the fact that Trump has offered it while Prime Minister Modi was in the White House. So it's like, Trump's F-35 offer to India, despite the fact that the US isn't very happy with the F-35 either, and Trump doesn't like it. It doesn't look good enough. It doesn't look, menacing enough. And they're looking at a new aircraft to replace the F-35 and the F-22. So they could possibly, palm off the F-35 onto other countries while they, move up onto the 6th generation fighters. But, here's the thing with the F-35 is that given the last couple of months, the kind of the grammar that they've used and, using trade as a negotiating tool to stop war between India and Pakistan, wouldn't this make you more vulnerable? The fact that you're buying such an expensive fighter jet. What if a US administration or a president tomorrow, it's obviously not going to happen in Trump's presidency, right? The deal will outlast his tenure and possibly go on to spill over into his successor's presidential tenure. I mean, these things take time, right? Even if it's a G2G deal. What prevents the U.S. administration from using the F-35 as a leverage against India to not fight the wars that they want you to fight? And this is what Thailand just saw recently when the U.S. didn't allow them to use their F-16s against Cambodia. So the U.S. is up for using all levers, commercial, diplomatic, and indeed military. So I think in the light of that, there would be people who would really question buying the F-35, no matter how high tech it is and how stealthy it is and how much of radar evading it is. And can it evade American sanctions? I think not. It's not that stealthy.
Right. So then I'm guessing what probably might happen is something that I discussed in season 2 of In Our Defense, the striker deal, because
Yeah.
that was like, boss, they are trucks.
Yeah. Well, they're
You
just
can make
armored
trucks.
vehicles.
Why
Yeah.
would you want
Sure,
to import them from the US? But
Right.
that's something again you can like, okay.
They can justify that. Oh, so we've taken strikers, we've taken maybe even two squadrons of F-35 under negotiation. We might buy more. So all of this is just going to be put on the table. But heart of hearts, I don't think our hearts are into this
Yeah.
now. Given how for the first time in 25 years we've seen open coercion, by an American president. There have been measures in the past you've seen that in 2019 when India signed that S-400 deal
Yes.
with the Russian Federation. There were warnings from was it the Trump administration then? The Trump administration and preceding him, the Obama administration. They warned us against buying the S-400 because they were afraid this would actually foreclose the sale of the F-35s to India.
Yeah.
The two can't coexist, right? You can't have the frontline American fifth generation fighter jet with the best Russian air defense system, picking up the radar signatures of the other one. So that was something that we signed, but all of this was behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And so I've spoken with the then Defense Minister Nirmala Sitharaman about this, and she said, "Look, we have told the Americans that this is in our interest and we need this, and this has anyway been signed before this talks were initiated before the CATSA thing came into effect." But all that was done closed door, But here now it is under Trump. It's my God.
Yeah.
It's Truth Social time.
Truth Social time, yes. So we'll talk about now how the situation may be like at South Block, but after a quick break.
But it is important, isn't it, to also communicate what's going to happen? Communication and comprehension, both are equally important. So nowadays in the modern type of a places, OPs and all, yes, we do tell them there's a scan, pelvic scan, but if you're not in relationship, it will be abdominal scan. If it is already in a relationship, then we can do a transvaginal where the rods will be there. But they can always, when it comes to uterus and all, best results will be transvaginal scan because it will be nearer to the uterus. We can find out everything what is necessary. But usually the sonologist, the technician who stays near the sonologist, they are the people who will make them understand and take them. But like you said, in PHCs, when it is overcrowded and all, they take it for granted. Times are changing. From last 2.5 decades to now, a huge leap in the way we talk to the patient, attend to the patient, and the respect to the patient. They have changed a lot. But there's still so much to improve on ourselves.
Welcome back. Sandeep, I now want to talk about what's it like for the diplomats at the MEA headquarters. What's it like for our ambassador in Washington, D.C.? There's a famous quote of Henry Kissinger. It is actually understood out of context. The quote says, "To be an enemy of America can be dangerous,
I knew that. Yeah,
but to
that's
be a
coming.
friend is fatal."
Fatal, yeah.
Now, the quote actually is understood out of context. So what I've dug up is that he actually said this to somebody just as Nixon was about to come into office. And what he was saying, and this was during the Vietnam War, what he was saying was that if the incoming president Nixon allowed a coup to happen, I'll rephrase. And what he was saying was that if the incoming president Nixon allowed a coup to happen in Vietnam, then the world would perceive America like so. They would believe that to be an enemy of America is dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal.
Yeah, they wouldn't hang with their friends.
But regardless of what Kissinger's context was, how he meant it, don't you think Trump is doing that exact same thing?
No, absolutely. Yes. Trump is realizing the words of Henry Kissinger, how much ever out of context they were, and they're popularly believed to be. Trump is actually telling the world that, to be our friend is a dangerous thing, but to be our, to be an adversary is dangerous, but to be our friend is fatal. Look how he's kicking his friends around, And this is the thing, Trump believes this comes from someone else in the United States, a friend who said that this is how Trump treats all his friends. You have to be literally completely prostrate, sucking up to Trump and only then will he give you any importance. You can't be a friend with an independent point of view.
Elon Musk?
Elon Musk, look what I mean. Elon Musk was kicked out of the US administration. I mean, though Trump has kind of, managed to cover up and say that he's a good guy and all that. This is a guy who paid Trump's bills,
Yes.
right? And he kicked him out because he thought he was being too big for his boots. He treats his friends as he has utter contempt for his friends, and he only admires, I feel, strong men like Putin, like Xi Jinping, like the North Korean dictator Kim, and these are the people that he actually thinks are. He wants to be like them, and he respects them, and he respects strength. So he's the classic bully, right? So that statement from the MEA was a way of calling out this bully on the block, and that's what Trump is.
Yeah. So then the question is, how do diplomats deal with him? Do you think it's for them? And now I'm talking specifically about the Indian diplomats. And do you think for them it's just a matter of riding the wave out? It's just like, they know at the back of their heads that it's just 3.5 years more of this guy. So you keep US and Trump separate. You deal with Trump separately, and you deal with the larger US the country separately. But the follow-up question to that, does that same sentiment also hold true for the State Department? Because it's only if you can deal with them in the future.
Well, I think that's a good question, by the way. I think what the government of India's hope would be now is to preserve the core of the India-US strategic partnership. It is an important partnership for us. There's no doubt about it. It comes out of a common fear of, China, a rise of China. We've never had a superpower at our doorstep, right? And today we have that superpower over 2,500 kilometers, who is in a collusive partnership with another adversary. So it's a two-front situation for us. And it helps for us to have partners from distant shores, which is where the United States comes in, and where, of course, the Russian Federation also comes in. But it's a tragedy that the Russian Federation and the Americans are at daggers drawn right now. But the fact is that the India-US strategic partnership is far too important to be sacrificed at the altar of one man's whims, and that is Trump. And I think the diplomats in South Bloc would be very careful now to ensure that the core of the relationship is preserved, that Trump does not do more damage beyond what he's already done. And they would, as you said, ride the storm out for the next 3.5 years and ensure that, maybe the next occupant into the White House in 2029 is going to be a little more reasonable than Trump. And Trump is not getting a third term. Thank God for that. Imagine a third, Trump term. Though Trump believes that he
can do something.
Yeah, he can do it, and
change the constitution.
He's going to change. I'm sure he's going to go kicking and screaming. He's not going to ride quietly into the night. I'm very convinced about that. At some point, he will start making this thing of saying that he was actually cheated out of his second term, therefore he deserves a third term. You will see all that kind of infantilism coming out of Washington very soon. But for our diplomats who've actually played it very, have played it very carefully, you saw that statement came out after grave provocation, after a series of statements that came out. So we're not we're not rising to his bait, right? We are doing exactly what is in our national interests. So there are, like I mentioned, there must be a lot of consternation at what's going on there. But everyone's pulling out their contingencies and, looking at the kind of plans that they must have drawn up for what's the worst that could happen, what can happen next. I hope they've made those contingencies, right? And this is something that they should have done right in January 2025, if not earlier. That what do we do in case Trump targets us with tariffs? How do you react to that? What are the levers that you pull? What are the buttons you press? What are the carrots you dangle? All of that, because it's an elaborate playbook. It can't be done over a few hours, or you can't be seen as responding to a tweet or something. You should have your blueprint all charted out, and I hope that they've done that. I sincerely hope they've done that. If it gets worse than this, for instance, you should actually plan. I did say that tariffs can be negotiated. It can come down. What if he's absolutely insistent on 50 and says that you have to open up the agricultural sector? What happens then, right? What do we do then? Do we go back on the US strategic partnership what are the areas that we can cause the US some pain. Can we ask for certain agreements that we have with them? This is says MOA and the LIMOA and all of that. Can we pause those? Can we tell State Department that why don't you hold this guy back before he damages? He's hit the exterior of the building. He's actually now going to enter the building and cause a lot of trouble. And we've spent 25 years building this building. So you take a call whether this is where you want the next 25 years to be, right? Because we have other countries like the Russian Federation who are very happy to do business with us, especially when it comes to the military relationship. I mean, I asked one of the former BrahMos DGs who was there when the Russia-Ukraine war began. And he told me that, despite Russia fighting the war, despite them needing their version of the BrahMos missile, which is the Yakhand, they ensured that our supplies of that engine didn't go down, right? The Ramjet engine, which is literally the heart of the BrahMos missile, that comes from Russia, which powers this BrahMos to Mark III. They ensured that supplies were all absolutely in order. There were no supply chain issues of the sort that we faced with American fighter jet engines, the GE 404s. The Russians are pretty, reliable and dependable when it comes to hardware sales, because they know that there is no history of Russians squeezing us over arms sales, and that's the reason that we love to do business with the Russians. I think a lot of Westerners don't get that. While American equipment is sophisticated, the engines are so good, they have extended lives and all that, they come with heavy strings attached, right? So this is the kind of contingency planning that they must be doing now. I fear that the next couple of months is going to be a rough and a rocky ride with Trump. It is so unpredictable, and we've just begun 6 months. It's 3.5 years to go. Oh God. What now? What next?
Yeah, and in fact, even the S400, by the way, it was some batteries were delivered during the Ukraine war. I think there was some delay there, understandably so, but they were of great use to us during Operation Sindoor, and the Russians ensured that we had them. Couple of last points, Sandeep. One, on the MEA statement and trying to sort of understand how the world of diplomacy works. So when the respective counterparts in the State Department must have read that statement, what must have they taken from it? So I'm not asking what Trump must have taken, because Trump, like he famously says, even he does not know at times what he's thinking. I mean, and he proves that, by the way. But these are seasoned diplomats, right? In the State Department. So they must have seen MEA's first statement. They must have seen MEA's second statement that came out last night after the additional tariffs. They must have seen PM Modi's statement, comments from earlier today.
Yeah.
So as a US diplomat, when you're reading such statements, what do you take out of it?
Well, if I were reading it, I mean, you just have to read what the U.S. diplomats have been writing. The sensible ones, Evan Feigenbaum, and all of those who've actually helped put the India-U.S. relationship on its tracks, and they are horrified by what they're seeing over here. Like that slow motion car crash. And it's not just the India-U.S. relationship. I mean, Trump has done that to India, to the U.S.-Europe relationship. He's done that with U.S.-Canada. Every country he's antagonized. And, the U.S. is not the United States. It's not the most powerful country on earth, but for its relationships with all of these countries, right? It's always about alliances for the United States. If you've noticed, the U.S. never goes into war on its own. It always ensures that it builds up, a band of allies. Let's go and, hammer Saddam or, beat up this guy or, do that. It's always a coalition that they prefer because, they don't want to be seen as isolationist and, like the bully on the block or something. They take people along with them. And I think one of the most amazing things about US power, which is the most powerful that any country has been in the history of the world, 80 years since the end of the Second World War in 1945. This is the month that the war ended, August of 1945. We're actually looking at the 80th year of that. That relationship, that preeminence of American power was crafted on alliances and relationships where you spoke to people, you took them on board, you didn't speak down to them, you took their concerns, you had very, very good diplomacy at play that ensured that this network of allies would be there either in NATO or in other partnerships that they've had with AUKUS and all of those. That would help the United States if they ever went to war. They would need bases, right? How does a country like the United States, which is on the other side of the world, control events on the other side in a different time zone? It needs bases, it needs allies, it needs all of that. And Trump is literally saying, I don't need any of this, it's me, it's me. It's just, he's almost trying to make America like him, like this big, alone, this neither feared nor loved kind of, bully on the block, that kind of thing.
Yeah. But I'm guessing the only saving grace there then is that it's just this one guy. Most people understand that.
Yeah.
So like you were saying
Yeah, the
that
State Department would definitely look. They've worked on this. These are career bureaucrats, career diplomats. They have invested skin in the game. The India-US strategic partnership is not an accident.
Yes.
It's not that Bill Clinton came in 2000 March and him and Chelsea and his wife Hillary, they looked at India and they saw this, lovely, beautiful democracy and they decided to start this, big relationship with India. It's everything that the United States does is carefully thought of. They build plans. They look at the future. They see where the world is headed. They see where economies are headed. At that time, I don't think we were even in the top 10 economies of the world. And today we are in the top 5. And by the end of this decade, we're going to be the 3rd largest economy. So that's a country that you want to have on your side, right? So those diplomats are now going to ensure that, just as we in South Bloc and in Delhi and in India are going to ride these 3.5 years. Who knows what's going to happen? He might land it up in Pakistan next, on our doorstep. So it's very unpredictable, The only thing predictable about Trump is his unpredictability.
Yeah.
So you will have diplomats now on both sides kind of talking to each other, talking under Trump, maybe some track 2 kind of thing, sending out word through, say, businesses or, other track 2s or think tanks to say, listen, is there a way we can continue this relationship and ensure that Trump doesn't cause too much of damage? Because what Trump actually is doing is that he wants to ensure that there is going to be an administration that will be, he believes that the current administration that he inherited, for instance, is a left liberal legacy. And therefore, MAGA is going to be the default setting and everything is going to be burned down and they're going to rebuild it all over again. So his aim is to overthrow the bureaucracy that's not stood by his wishes and not obeyed his commands. So our idea is that we want those status quo is there in part because we are very uncertain what kind of world is coming in with, MAGA and all this kind of unpredictableness that Trump has brought into the thing. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your attention. In fact, there's a theory that this slapping around, so to speak, of India that Trump is doing is actually also to appeal to the MAGA base because they're not very happy with what they perceive the US to be sort of pandering to Indians and Indian interests. Especially with, a lot of Indian Americans holding positions of great power in the US, taking jobs is what they believe. So that. And just to add to your earlier point about the arduous task, the role played by bureaucrats to sort of have this relationship up and running, I think if people are interested, they should read Shankar Menon's, if I'm not wrong, the book is called Choices, where he talks about what actually went behind closed doors to make the Indo-US nuclear deal happen.
It's historic.
It's a crazy chapter.
You must read about that.
Book.
Yes, it's a good chapter on his book. And Shankar Menon, incidentally, played a very key role there. And so did the then NSA, M.K. Narayanan.
Yes.
I did speak with him recently over a long, extended video call. And when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh had passed away. And he told me that, look, we just went to the United States to get some fuel for our nuclear reactors, right? Because all our reactors were running below capacity. We needed some fuel. We said, is there some way that you can help us do this? And they came up with this architecture that completely changed where we are today as a nation. And in the sense that we now have access to dual-use technologies that were not given to us pre-2008. Which we now are. We're part of a large number of clubs that we were not part of earlier. The Wassenaar Agreement, the MTCR, Missile Technology Control Regime, and all of those nuclear supplier group waivers we've got. So we are now open to buying uranium from wherever in the world. And so does the United States, by the way. And you saw that Scott Ritter's tweet on how the United States is actually buying the equivalent of 2 Russian armored divisions every year. They're giving Russia $40 billion. They're buying stuff worth $40 billion from them. Talk about double standards there. Railing against us buying oil. You're buying uranium from Russia, for God's sake, the United States. So the thing is that this is something that completely transformed the trajectory of India-US ties, and that nuclear deal was a big deal. There are, of course, commentators who say, "Oh no, it's nothing. It's crippled us. It made us a second-rate nuclear power and all of that." But I believe, at least in the short term, in the last 20 years or something, it's given us huge, enormous benefits in terms of access to science and technology, and countries that would never do business with us earlier never give us technology. I mean, the Japanese and Germans, for God's sake, they would never sell us anything because they were so afraid of us using it into the nuclear and the missile programs, and of course space, which is seen very closely allied with the missile program. So it did bring us out of the the nuclear paradigm that we were subject to. But ever since, we've not seen the next big leap after the Indo-US nuclear deal. I think the biggest event since the Indo-US nuclear deal has been the Trump tariff deal.
Right. Final thoughts, Sandeep, and this is about Indian diplomacy in general, especially in the last few years. So what we've seen is that it's a much more aggressive diplomacy. It's very resolute in putting India first, and it believes in a strong multilateralism philosophy. Though people can argue that that's historically been the case, but it's much more visible, is what I'm trying to say in the last few years. Apart from the push from the political authority, the highest levels, the PMO and stuff like that, how much of a role do you think the fact that we have, for the first time in our history, a career diplomat serving as the Minister of External Affairs played in that? Shankar took on that charge in 2019. He's been the minister since. He was the ambassador to China before that and to the US before that. So he's and the foreign secretary, of course, right before he took charge as, not right before, but before he took charge as the Minister of External Affairs. So how much of a role do you think he's played as somebody who's a seasoned diplomat in shaping our diplomacy in the last?
Well, I think Foreign Minister Shankar has done exceedingly well, projecting the new and very aggressive and pro-India, diplomacy that we've seen in the last decade or so, ever since he's been first foreign secretary and then later foreign minister. And I think that was he's one of the key movers and shakers in this government. And they're literally, if you're looking at foreign policy and national security, there are literally two engines. It's a double-engine sarkar, right? It's NSA Mr. Ajit Doval and it's Foreign Minister Shankar. So he's a very key part of this. And I think one of the reasons that he was chosen by Prime Minister Modi to lead this was for his very outright, forthright views, and the fact that he sees India as having, arrived on the world stage, and it's not a country that can be pushed around anymore. And I've known him ever since he was our ambassador to Beijing, which is where I first met him. Okay. And I was, astonished at the sheer breadth of knowledge that the man has. And, he could speak on anything, from Tom Clancy novels to the LTT. And, we had a very, very fascinating conversation. I remember the first time I met him, I was given a half-hour audience, and that appointment spilled over to more than an hour and a half. And that's when I realized that, this is someone who could, enormously benefit us as foreign secretary. And I think the government of India has seen the utility of him as a foreign minister in the way he's able to project India's position on a number of issues, especially the double standards. He's called out the European double standards. And he's been very, so he is actually literally the face of the kind of diplomacy that India wants to project into the world. And it's not always going to be, it's not, roses all the way. There are thorns as well. There are times when our, diplomatic efforts might take a setback. It might look like Pakistan has the upper hand for various reasons, right? But I think you don't bet against India. The thing is that, you You don't bet against the house. India is the house. You might have Pakistan for, instant gratification or some small little tactical deal that they'll give you some air bases here or a Nobel Prize there or massage your ego or something like that. But India is the default setting, right? It is simply too large, it's simply too big to ignore. And I think the United States also recognizes that howsoever insulting Trump's demeanor and tone might be, I think the US realizes that it needs India possibly more than India needs the United States.
Yeah. Great then. And I think I'll take a takeaway from that, a golden one, is that perhaps down the road, when Trump is not in office, India can use this period as leverage. Okay, remember back then what your president did to us? Give us that deal.
Yeah, he'll be here in Gurgaon on Trump Tower or something like that by then. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Great then, Sandeep. Thanks. Fantastic chat as always.
As
A
always,
lot of fun.
Dev.
Yeah. And thanks to all our listeners and viewers. That's it for this week's Defense Dose. For more, tune in next week. Till then, stay safe and do not cross any boundaries with that passport. Bye-bye.